questions. We're taking the quest. Join Tarsha on this journey to discover the rest. Go.
Welcome to the Adoption Journey podcast. I am your host, Tarsha Smith, and welcome to yet another journey. From what I've been told, we need to put on 3 seatbelts, so go ahead and buckle up. While you're buckling up, go ahead and click subscribe and follow everywhere the Adoption Journey podcast, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, everywhere. And if you want special stuff, you got to go to Patreon for that. Everywhere. All right. So I am excited to hear this story from a fellow adoptee. Hi, Morgan.
Hello, hello, hello. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I cannot complain.
All right. So let's dive in. I want to know, how old were you when you found out that you were adopted?
Okay. I was 4.
And at 4, how do you find out?
Yes. We took a trip to Disney World before I started kindergarten.
Okay.
I grew up in a Christian household. Not that my parents grew up that way. My dad is from the West Indies, staunch Catholic background. My
Okay.
mom from the South, and it was just, make sure you go to church every Sunday kind of thing.
Got
So it
it.
wasn't until I was born that it was like, okay, maybe we might want to pay some attention a little bit more to church.
Okay.
So my mom mainly was listening to Dr. James Dobson at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and it was strongly suggested that, before your children enter school, make sure that you tell them that they are adopted. And so that's what they did. We went on this trip, and, it was like, hey, Morgan, you're adopted. And I turned around and was like, I know. And then kept skipping. And so that was that until I was about 8. And I was like, then 8, that was a little different. So, yeah. But that was
Okay,
the first
4-year-old,
time.
I know.
I don't even know what I knew, but I probably did know.
You
Like
probably did know. You're like,
yeah,
tell me
there was a
something
lot
I
of
don't
things
know.
that, like, as I'm going through therapy now, that I realized I did know. I didn't know how I knew. I sensed a
Yeah.
lot of things. And so now learning how to read and trust that has been, an interesting journey. So yeah.
So, and when you said, I know, they just let it go, right?
Yeah.
They didn't say, there's like, okay.
Yeah. That, I guess, for them was enough. And so they kind of just left it alone. Yeah.
Okay, so you said at 8, it was a different
Yes.
conversation. So what happens at 8?
Yes. As many adoptees have shared in their story, there comes that time in school where there's some kind of project or something that,
Oh, the
comes
projects.
up. So this was
Yeah.
like a twofold thing. And so one day I'm standing in the mirror getting my hair done, and, I'm looking at my face, and out loud, I thought, so I was like, I think sometimes that's where we get in trouble. Like, we think very innocent thoughts and then they come out loud and they're not received well. So it was one of those good old fashioned yank in the back of the head. And it was like, take a good look at this face. This is the only mother you've got.
What did you say
Nothing.
out loud? No. What did you say out loud?
That's what I said. I wonder what my real mom looks like.
And she said, get your
That's what
life
I said. And it
together.
was one of those, yeah, take a good look at this face. This is the only real mother. This is the only mother you've
Mm.
got.
Do you
And
remember how
so
that made you feel? Can you remember that?
um I think at the moment I just shut down. It was more like, as I've been unpacking this now, I can
Yeah.
say it was more about my mother's feelings. I have always been that person who, I want her approval. I will never get that. That's just one of those things. It's,
Uh,
yeah. And she's been very honest about it. And I'm like, you can't even give me the benefit of the doubt. And she's like, for what? I don't give anyone the benefit of the doubt. So I'm like, you don't even give yourself credit for, like, no, no. So she's a hard sell, hard, like, all the way down the line.
oh, okay. I have
So
several
yeah.
questions. I have
I,
several questions. I have so many questions. already at 8.
Yes, exactly. I had no idea that 8. Yeah.
Yeah. And tell me about the project at school.
So the project was your grand old family tree.
That's what I
And
thought.
if you let my mom tell it, I had a fit.
Mm,
And I don't remember having a fit. I just remember saying, I cannot complete this assignment.
that is so interesting because I had the assignment and I just filled it out with my adoptive parent stuff and went and got my A and kept it pushing.
That's what my mom wanted me to do, but I felt like I was lying. It was like a whole lie. I'm like, why does everybody else get to put the real
The
thing
real
down and I
stuff.
don't get to put the real thing down? So, no.
I'm
So,
trying to
I put my foot
remember.
down and I protested much.
Yeah, I wasn't protesting yet. Not that early.
Yeah, I was protesting. So that was like, yeah, that was the 4th grade. That was 4th grade. Um and I feel like after those two things, because my mom was like, Morgan, just put this down. And I'm like, yeah, okay. I mean, I can't lie. It's like a twofold, it's like a war inside.
Mm,
It really is just all the time. And even when you get into reunion, then it's even a bigger one. And then if there's estrangement that's attached to it, then that's even a
even a
bigger
bigger one.
one.
Hold on. Let me pull you back. We'll get there. Let me
Like, you know what I'm
come
saying? So
back.
like,
Come back. Come back.
so yeah,
So
at
I,
8, that's a lot to unpack.
that's a lot at 8. Okay, so now we're in elementary school. She has told you to get your life together. This is the
Hmm.
only mama. This is it. Look at this
Yeah.
face, and just do your project and just let it go. Walk me through because you just said it was like warring inside. Is it something that's always in the back of your head, but you're still just doing life, or do you find yourself beginning to act out because it's always in the back of your head?
Um, I think subconsciously the second, the latter. But I got to a place where I completely made it nothing.
Mm,
Like, because it seemed to pain my mother so much, I then completely, when I say deaded that part of me, I did not pay it any mind. Now, I'm not going to say that the things that I did wasn't probably a result of that. And,
mm-hmm.
of course, I was, if you, again, my mom would say I was an angry child. It's really funny. I don't consider myself to be an angry child. I thought
Really?
I was funny. There's a lot of, none of my friends would tell me that, but my mom will say, she was like, yes, Morgan, you were very angry. And again, as I sit and have unpacked things, she was right. But I think that my anger was because I was shut down and silenced.
Yeah, that'll do it. That'll
And so
do it.
for me, the only way I had to get it out some way. And so, yes, in those elementary and middle school years, that's how I did it. Now, come 9 and a half, another child enters the space.
Okay, stop. Hold on. Back up. I'm gonna pull you back one more time
Okay, pull
because
back.
it's a lot about dad. I mean, mom. But what's going on with dad?
Um, my dad is like probably the coolest person that you'll ever meet.
Okay.
He is a very social person, at the same time an introvert, so he deals very well with people. He was a stockbroker on Wall Street, so having to deal with people and knowing how to do that was big, and being one of the only black men, if not actually he was the only black man on Wall Street as an actual broker and trader,
Okay.
up until probably my 20s. um there was a certain, he had to carry himself a certain way.
Yeah, got it.
So I would laugh when I saw my dad in sneakers, because this was a guy who was always in suits, you know. But he's also a twin. He comes from a very large family,
Okay.
and he's like the youngest. So my dad, he was the breadwinner, and he's also, West Indian, so he comes from the provide and very much there. I was 100% and still am a daddy's girl. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's hands down.
Hands down.
Um,
But we're still gonna let mom run the show
yeah,
when
in
it
the
comes to
sense of like
this.
exactly the rearing
Yeah.
is kind of that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say I had to really like do something for him to like
Step in.
you know what
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. To
yeah.
step in. Got you.
But I was like, down the line, you hear it's different. You know what I mean? That was with me.
Mm-hmm.
I can say that. That at least was with me.
Okay. I'm gonna
Yeah.
let you go on to turn the corner to high school now. I'm gonna
So,
let you go.
yeah. So actually, no, not even. We didn't even get there. So
Oh,
at
we're not high
9,
school yet. We're
we didn't
9.
even get to high school. At like 9 and a half, there's another child that enters the space.
Oh, right, because I stopped you right there, and I was like, wait a
Yeah.
minute, come back. Okay, so another
So right
child,
there,
adopted or biological?
so biological to my mother, her nephew.
Oh, I was like, girl, what? Okay, I'm glad
Yes.
you explained.
Yes. So my cousin, so my mother's brother,
So a kinship
um
type adoption.
exactly, ended up coming in, and this was something that was supposed to be completely temporary. It was a 3-month
Okay.
thing. I need to get my life together, help me out, and that became the rest of life. And that's a
Mm,
whole nother podcast for a whole nother time. He's
got it.
100% interested, you know what I mean? He's ready to share his side of the story as he's going through stuff as well. But
Got it.
that in and of itself was hard too, because at 8, 9 years old, just starting to get a sense of self
Mm-hmm.
and really where you belong. So now I don't really care whether or not it's a baby or still another child, because he was 3 and a half when he entered our home.
Mm-hmm.
There still is an air of a lot of fuss. And eventually come to that, my brother, there was a lot of things that he was dealing with due to neglect from his early years.
Gotcha.
So, of course, now, that pulls. And then me being a people pleaser, the first thing I do, though, is withdraw. So that's where you get me now, middle school and high school, completely
Oh,
withdrawn. I don't
in
really
middle
talk
school,
to anyone. Middle school was
yeah,
absolutely horrible. I was an early developer. I went to predominantly white schools. I was bullied on all fronts, put in closets for disciplinary reasons that really were completely beyond me. Like,
at school.
yes, I hated it. So I was a person who actually changed schools every year, as well,
Why?
which, um, whether it was academic, environment, social, my mom thought that something, was better. Like from first to fourth grade, it was a school that was affiliated with the church. And then that was starting to close down. So then I went to public school, and my mom was like, no, we're not going to do that. So then I went to private school, and then they were really racist. So then it was like, well, let's find another one, you
Oh, so you
know.
never had a chance to just really settle down.
No, the longest I ever stayed anywhere was from 10th to 12th grade, and that was a 5-day boarding school. Yeah.
Wait a minute. Can how? Okay, so we switched schools all these years, and then now
Mhm.
we're going to go to boarding school. Talk about that experience.
Um
How do you feel? I don't think I know anybody that went to boarding. No, you're first.
so I was, let's see. That school only had 300 kids from 6th to 12th grade.
Oh,
So
how
my
far
high
away?
school,
Huh,
so I graduated with like 47 other people.
I, because let me tell you where my brain went immediately. Mommy Dearest. Christina went to boarding school. If you've seen the movie, Christina went to
Yeah,
boarding
I
school.
did. And the
Yeah.
funny thing is, the boarding school used to be, it was like a alternative school, but it was turning its corner to a college prep. So when I was accepted, it was more of a college prep. It had become co-ed. It was no longer just an all boys school. Um, I don't remember. Someone in our church, I think, ended up telling my mom about it, and so she was like, "Oh,
And
let me go
in
check it
10th
out."
grade, are you okay with just leaving home like that? Even I know it's 5 days, but still, you're still leaving home. Are you okay with that? You're totally okay with that. You're like, okay.
I didn't even care what it was. It just
Okay.
wasn't home.
So you okay, got it.
Yeah, yeah. And at that point in time, it was just like, you know what? I'm already in the headspace of I'm ready to go off to college. I'm ready to get out of this house. Like, what do I need to do? So
Mm.
I kind of just focused. So where some people was like, what was that like? Some kids that I even went to school with, they sometimes ask me, they're like, "What, did you even go to school with us? You didn't even know that happened?" No, guys, I was trying to at that time be a pediatric neurosurgeon. I had zero time for whatever y'all were doing. Like,
Oh, so you weren't doing
yeah,
all the high school things.
I was, yeah, exactly. So I was, because I figured that was going to please my mom. That's what my mom said I needed. And from
Wow.
6th to 12th grade in the high school,
Yeah.
in the summers, my best friend and I, we were going on all of these college tours. And I don't want you to think that, like, when I characterize like my childhood, yes, like I said, I am unpacking things, but I had a great childhood. I was
Mhm.
awarded things that the average child didn't. I spent my ninth birthday on the Sea of Galilee.
Mm.
I've stamped out multiple passports. So I've been afforded a lot of things that the average, especially in our community, don't get to
Mhm.
do.
Mhm.
Which is why when I'm sitting rubbing elbows still in the high school that I went to, and these are now big known people where, you drop a name and you're like, oh, that person, oh, that person. Yeah, these people, I still look like the person who's, you know, a pennies in a bucket,
in, com-
compared to
in
that.
comparison,
So
got it.
exactly. And so, and I knew again, just like, we all do, our parents are going to kill us. You can't really get into too much. So I wasn't. And so then I was the brunt of jokes. Like, well, if we ever had to sacrifice anyone, Morgan would be it because she's the purest of us
She's the
all.
purest of us all.
Yeah, that was the running joke. And I was fine with that. Whatever.
Okay, I want
Um,
to ask you a question because
mhm.
usually in that high school era, this is when we start wanting to date and get into all that stuff. What is that looking like for you at this point?
So I was not allowed to date. Like I said,
And
very
even at boarding school,
strict.
you didn't just do what you wanted to do while you was away from the house?
So I did. I didn't say I didn't do that. I wasn't allowed to do that.
Got
Um,
it.
the
Got
very
it.
the very first boy that I ever liked was a very short-lived relationship, but I can at least say that I can appreciate the person that he was and even is still this day, because he never wanted to keep it a secret. All the other boys, they were fine with it. They were like, "Oh, sure. You don't want to tell your mom or you don't want to tell your dad, cool." He was like, no, if you're going to be my girlfriend, like, I don't really want to keep it a secret. And so that was definitely one of the deciding factors. So,
I was
kudos
going to
to
say
that
that's why
one
it was
stand
short
up guy.
lived.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I had like two boyfriends. I had one white boyfriend. I did try that one time. He was a very nice guy, but I was like the hand holding type. You know what I mean? Like, I was
Yeah.
very prude. I was very much like, I'm gonna get married a virgin, da 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 da. Like, so
Hmm.
exactly. That's why I was made fun of, and I had no
Yeah.
problem telling people what I thought.
And that, you're right. That's a good thing.
Exactly. So, it
Yeah.
was what it was. But yeah, so I only had like two boyfriends in high school. I tried it out. Um, just really wasn't.
In your parents' mind, when were you supposed to be able to start dating? What was the
That's a
age?
good question. My dad probably answer would have been never.
Never,
Like,
ever.
yeah, I remember being 20 something and I was watching like some J-Lo movie and he was like, "What's that rated?" I was like, "Get out of here." Like, I mean, he was just joking, but still, like, that's the kind of dad.
Yeah.
So for him, yeah, probably never. My mom, she was more into making sure that I didn't make the same mistakes that she did as a young woman.
Sounds like she did a
So
lot of projecting.
yeah, so I mean, she got married early, at like 22 years old. Technically, my dad was like her only boyfriend.
Hmm.
So it was like, she's like, I want you to live life. I want you to do whatever. So she never really put a number on it. She
Okay.
just really wanted me to fulfill me before I became someone's
Became someone's
wife.
wife. Got it.
Exactly. And for that, I can appreciate that. I
Okay.
understand where she was coming with that.
Okay. Got it. Okay. So I just wanted to get to know who Morgan is and
Yeah.
what Morgan, the Morgan that decides to say, you know what, I've got a birth family out there. So when do you turn that corner?
Kids.
Hmm.
My
That's what
own.
turns the switch on.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
own kids. I
So,
get that though. I get that.
and I struggled with that for a really long time. I did not want children for a long time.
Mm.
I did not only did I know that I wasn't necessarily going to have support if it wasn't like I was married and all of these other things set into place as far as my mom was concerned. My grandmother was a completely different story. Like the rest of my family were different. My grandma was like, listen, you ain't the first, you're not the last. If this happened, it is what it is. That's my grandmother's take. Of course, my dad isn't that necessarily that way. It might have been, had I been a boy, like,
Mm-hmm.
be responsible, but do your due. But when it's your daughter, it's a little different.
It's very different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So what's the first step you take in finding your birth family? Or let me back up. Birth
yeah.
mom or birth dad? Which one do
Did
you go for first?
I ended up going for my birth mother first.
Okay.
Um,
And walk me through step
so
one. What'd you do?
when I decided
Wait,
first,
hold
it,
on.
it, it first just,
Let
yeah,
me
I was
ask you
gonna
this
say we're
real
gonna put,
fast.
okay,
Let
go
me
ahead.
ask you this real fast. Closed adoption.
Closed.
Okay, I assume that. I just
Yes,
wanted to
yes,
just
yes,
okay.
closed because I was born in '85.
Definitely
So,
closed. Okay. Mm-hmm.
so I want to say, um, my son was not the first time I was pregnant.
Okay.
And my decision to have him was one of those, um, if I ever get this chance again, um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna roll with it. And like I said, I never really played like I had kids. I never really considered that. Again, I picked a career that I probably would have been around 35 to 40 by the time I would have been really certified. And at the time in my head, it was like I wanted to do that before I did family because I had already had mentorship with those who were neurosurgeons and scientists. And they were like, yeah, you lose your life. So if you want to have kids and be present, like I wouldn't suggest that. And at the time, I was still
Mm.
very much committed to those
To
goals.
those goals.
On top of the fact that, we all have that mom that's just like, don't you come home with no baby in the
Yeah.
college kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that was like a twofold thing. But eventually it got to the place where, boom, I find out that I am pregnant and now I have to tell my mom. And um,
Because you're not married.
no, I'm
Just to
not
be
married.
clear.
I'm
Okay.
25. I'm
Okay.
25.
Okay.
I had just newly come home, maybe about 2, 3 years from college. Had wiped out a bunch of college debt. Was still working at Applebee's at the time and really just traveling and enjoying life.
Okay.
I was a EMT. I had just finished getting certified as an EMT and was super excited to finish out my first year so that I could start training for SWAT. So
Okay.
complete 180 from,
For
pediatric
sure.
neurosurgeon, in college to, life and everything. And like, okay, no, I think this is what I want to do.
Okay.
And I ended up rekindling a very loose acquaintance from growing up in church. And that's who the father of my son is.
Okay.
He's an amazing individual. We were both very young, trying to figure out our place as far as our own families. He's not
Sure.
adopted, but sometimes even in your own biological, you feel like you are.
Yeah.
And we used to, lay awake at night laughing, like, hey, maybe we'll come up with a whole new last name and start our own family kind of thing. So, like, this was, we were trying to figure things out. And then life hit. He was a cop at the time. He got wrapped up in Bloomberg's huge layoff.
Okay.
And you never really know how people take those things. And,
Mm-hmm.
at 25, a young man and, starting a family kind of thing, I really identify with what you do. And when you
Yes.
feel like when you put all of your eggs in one basket and now you don't know what to do and time is ticking
Mm.
against you, some people, they don't know how to handle it. And so that's where, I've learned to be able to give him grace over the years and understanding where, things went awry. But at the time, I needed someone who was going to be able to provide, be
Right.
consistent, do all of these things. And, like I said, we were young. So trying to figure that out. So in all of this and being pregnant, my mom comes up to me and she goes, "Hey," that's like this, "I think that you should go to the adoption agency and see if there's anything you need to be concerned about."
Huh? Hmm.
Now, this is the first time we've had a conversation since I was 8. So I was like, okay. And she goes, "Yeah, it hasn't moved. It's, right on, I think, East 92nd Street in Manhattan."
Okay.
Oh, okay. Not once ever. When I tell you shelved it from 8, shelved it.
Yeah.
So being pregnant, at no point in time
It never
did
crossed your mind.
nothing,
Never even
nothing.
crossed your mind.
Why?
Yeah.
Because nothing really crossed my mind. It wasn't until I was holding my baby that I was like, "Oh shoot, I've never even changed a diaper." So, like, I had no idea really how oblivious to a lot of things I was
Yeah.
and how that would even bring up anything or have anything to do with anything.
So, okay. Do you go to the adoption agency?
I do. Um,
How long did it take you to go? Did you sit on that or did you like
Girl,
go ahead and
yes.
go?
Yes, I
You,
sat on
that's
it.
why I
I sat
asked.
on it.
That's why I asked.
I sat on it. Listen, I've
Because
been
see,
sitting
somebody
for
like me would have
years.
been the next day.
So
Immediately, I'm going.
here's the thing. I learned to have to sit on it. Again, that was my draw in because I felt like everything, every time, all the chips were always stacked up against me. And only
Mm.
one time until almost a decade later did it actually like help. Well, I go to the adoption agency and I do hit a roadblock. Why? Because it's not like they're sitting there with a file and they're just going to pull it out and be like, "Here you
Right.
go."
Right. It's in my desk drawer. Hold it here.
Yeah, no.
No.
They were like, that's not how you do things. But they were like, "Listen, here's what we can do." And I met this amazing lady. I do not remember her last name, but I do remember her first name was Judy. Probably one of the most kindest individuals that I have ever met in this adoption space. And she looked at me and she was like, "Morgan, um, I can do this for you. I can direct you towards paperwork that you can put in through the state.
Hmm.
That will give you non-identifying information."
Your parents didn't have any non identifying information to give you?
No. My dad was like, "I don't know what you're talking about. Ask your mom." My mom was like, "I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh,
You go to Spend
okay.
Shape and ask them."
Got it. Okay. So we're at the adoption agency.
Exactly. So
Got it.
I'm like, "Okay, no problem." Um, I said, "Well, hey, wait a minute. Death records, those are public." I became the person who took no. As much as I was a people pleaser, I did not take no for an answer. So I
Mm-hmm.
was always finding ways to get what I wanted
Around
because
it.
things were
Yeah.
shut down all the times, right? So I was like, "So death records are public. Can you at least tell me if they're alive?" That would have been enough for me to hold till whatever happened. I probably would have been all right with just that information alone. So the lady was like, "I want to answer you, but let me consult legal and then I'll get
Okay.
back to you." So she took my information. She called me back a couple of days later and was like, "We did consult legal. You were absolutely right. Death and birth records are 100%, uh,
Public.
public. So I can tell you that yes to both." And I was like, "Okay." And I was okay with that. So I sat on it a little more. I filled out the information and they told me 6 to 8 months. So by
Mm-hmm.
the time I would have received this information, and my son's due date, he definitely would have been here probably about 5, 6 months or so. So I was
Mm-hmm.
expecting to already have delivered. It took 2 months.
Mm. And how far along are you in the pregnancy at this point?
7.5, yeah, because
Okay.
he ended up coming early. Yeah, so 7.5 months. And I'm driving to work. At this point in time, my then fiance had been laid off. He was not working. I was the only one that was working. I had moved out from my mother's house, had moved in with my future in-laws because it was my parents had already now divorced, and my mom and I did not have a relationship. She did not speak to me the entire pregnancy, pretty much. And I got to the point where it was like a hostile environment. I can't be pregnant in a hostile environment. So I was like,
Right.
I'm out. So I packed up all my stuff.
Did she stop talking to you because you got pregnant?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Okay.
ruined my life. I made this was not the path I was
She
supposed to be making.
You ruined her life is what she meant to say, but I
Yeah.
digress.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much. Pretty
I
much.
digress.
So yeah. So I was like, once again. And I felt like this was the first time I really made a decision for myself.
Mm.
So, having to eat, living my own truth, and feeling okay with a decision, and now that meaning I lose communication, affection, the only kind of mother I know, and I'm about to be a mother for the first time.
Mm.
I I went inside myself again. I did not
Yeah.
cling to my partner at all because I didn't know how to express that to him, and he had his own things that were going on.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like that was too much of a conversation I could have with his parents or his family.
It's a complicated
So
one.
I
Yeah.
kind of was just at it alone. Um, but what that lady did leave me with, besides filling out the information, is she was like, I will tell you this. You can go to the library, because at the time you could still go, to the public library, go through books. There's angels, people to help you, blah, blah, blah. So she explained to me how the books were done. And she goes, you should be able to find
Your
yourself
your birth number. Yeah.
because of your birth number,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a very unique last name. So I'm like,
Mm.
okay. So maybe this will be easy. So I gear up some courage, and 3 times I go, and 3 different times I'm turned away at the door. One time it was closed.
Okay.
The second time they were closing and not letting anyone else in.
Okay.
And the third time was there were people stealing identities, so it was no longer available for public
Oh
access.
man.
So I was like, okay. Now, this all happens after I put in the paperwork. So I was like, well, maybe I can get ahead of this paperwork, since this paperwork is not going to really tell me much.
Yeah.
So one day I'm on my way to work, and I get a phone call, and it is the adoption agency. And their protocol is to read the paperwork to you, but then also mail it.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, yeah, go ahead. And she goes, Morgan, are you driving? Yes. I will not read this while you are driving.
Oh,
Why not? I'm cool. I'm like 5 minutes away from my job. She goes, no, ma'am. No, ma'am. She's like, this information has been bound to create a lot of emotions. And so you can call me back. I will sit right here at my desk. You can call me back when you park.
get to the parking lot.
So I
Okay.
said, okay. I didn't even care. I was working at TGI Fridays at the time. I was, like a shift manager, but I cared less. I called
Yeah.
them. I was like, I have to take a very important phone call. I promise you, I'm out in the parking lot. You can see my car, but this is what I will attend to until I come in. They were like, okay, no problem. Very, very gracious again. So I sat there, I called her back, and she proceeded to read this non-identifying information. And I wept.
You don't get to skip over the non-identifying information. What did it say? Come back.
I wept over information that was so vague.
But it was information that you never knew.
It
And
was
inquiring
information I
minds
never
want to
knew.
know, what did it say?
Yes, yes, yes. So the information was, that I am the second child.
Okay.
I was born to a birth mother in the North Mid-Atlantic region. So
Okay.
now I'm like Googling, what does that mean? And they're like, please don't do that because I guarantee you, you're not going to get the answers that you want. So I was like, okay, fine. Like, I just,
Doing it anyway,
again,
though.
another
But
block.
okay.
Yeah, exactly. Another block. Um, she had a degree in communications. Um, my sibling is very close in age. Her biological sister, she has an older sister, and she helped with pageants. So my birth
Hmm.
mother was in pageants and
Okay.
actually was crowned Miss the state that she was in.
Oh,
Um, and I'm trying to think if there was like anything else. There was a little blurb about her mother, which was that she was a history teacher at a Catholic school and was a natural redhead.
you got a lot of
So
information.
yeah, I'm getting like all this information, and then the
Did you
first
get
thing
her
I do,
age?
no.
Okay.
But no, I didn't get the age. For me, I figured she was somewhere in like her 50s. And this was when I was in my 20s. This is what I was thinking based upon the information. I was like, okay, so maybe she's
Hmm.
like somewhere in her 50s. Um, Based upon me getting this, and then I'm like her being in college and this and the third, because it never really said how old she was when I was born.
Okay.
Or maybe it did. It might have. It might have. I don't know. Yeah, it did. It said she was 23. It did.
Okay.
So it did. It said she was 23. So there
And
wasn't really. There was a little bit about her father. Her parents were divorced.
you got a
Um,
lot of
her
information.
father had died before, a little bit before I was born. They had a very good relationship. Her mother did remarry. But then that was it.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. And so for me, I was like, okay, well, that's enough. Shoot, I don't even really think I need names. Like, I'm good. And so I was good
For how long?
until now my baby can talk. So, and I will tell you this, I don't even want to skip over that part because I will tell you, I had the hardest time when my son was born. And I tell him this story because it's very much a part of his birth story. I had a very hard time attaching to him in the beginning.
Hmm.
One, because there wasn't that instantaneous. I picked the hospital and the doctor at the time that I did because how very pro natural they were. I had no idea anything about natural epidural birth,
Mm-hmm.
nothing, like nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. I had a semi amazing birth experience. I can say when I look at what the climate of the Black maternal uh, health rate is right now,
Yes.
and being a doula, I am blessed for the two birth experiences that I had.
Mm-hmm.
I did have a Black OB who showed up and showed out at my first birth because where do you know you can almost labor 2 days and someone's not threatening to cut you open?
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
was 39 and a
Yeah.
half hours.
Oof.
But
God
yes,
bless you.
exactly. But I woke up in a panic afterwards because I was absolutely exhausted, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, and there was no baby. And then I look at my baby and I don't know who he looks like. And that was my biggest
Oh.
letdown because I looked to see me in him and I saw no one.
And I tell the story that when I had my first son, it never occurred to me that he could come
Really?
here looking just like me.
Right?
Never crossed my mind until they put that little boy in my arms and I looked down and I said, "Oh my God, he looks just like me." It
I,
never crossed my mind.
well, it never really crossed my mind either. We used to laugh and joke about like who he would look like, and because his dad is a lot darker, it was more of, are we gonna get this nice chocolate baby, or are we gonna get this mocha baby? So that's where that's
That's
as
where,
far as it went.
oh, you were disappointed when you looked at the
So
little one.
yeah. And I could not connect. And then it also did not help that he was a little early. And because of the layoff with my partner at the time, and then all of a sudden NYPD realizing, oh shoot, we didn't do what we were supposed to do, and now them telling us they were shutting off the insurance. Like, again, I'm the only one that's working. I'm on my feet working, 8 to 12 hours, trying to make sure that, we're good together. He's trying to, at least if nothing else, save what he gets unemployment wise to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that we're good to go. It did cause a strain on the relationship, of
Sure.
course.
Sure.
And so now it's like, okay, so now what are we going to do? So I ended up moving back to my mom's.
Ooh.
And I moved back to my mom's literally like a week before I had my son. Yeah.
So, what was your mother present
I
when
had
you
to
had
eat
your?
crow. No, eat crow, beg down, apologize, like, and just know that this is only temporary. I'm not watching your baby. I'm not here as a second person. Like, you're on your own, kiddo. Like, that's what it was. But for me, I just needed something different than the living space that I was in with my partner's
Yeah.
parents at the time. They were needing to move out of the house, and it was a lot of stuff, and I was like, you know what, this is not best. Now I was thinking about my health and baby at the time. So I was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
so now I have to move back. So it was a lot that caused me to go into labor early. So now I have my son
Correct.
at 35 weeks.
Okay.
So now I have
Oh,
to deal with the NICU.
yeah.
I drove myself home from the hospital, and then I drove myself back and forth from New Jersey down to St. Luke's in Manhattan every single day. I stayed until they kicked me out of the NICU, and then I was there from the first time that they were there. They got to a place where they knew, don't feed my baby till I got there. I like just they told me what schedule they were putting him on. I became a pumping machine at home and pumped at the same times that, he was at home, even though, he was there.
Mm-hmm.
I would rush to bring milk so that that was the only thing, because he wasn't taking formula. And at
Mm-hmm.
35 weeks, you haven't laid down the brown fat. So it was a temperature regulation issue that was causing him having to stay. The moment my milk came in, thankfully, was all that he needed. And then he was able to come home. So we spent a week in the NICU, came home. My grandmother rushed. It was actually the 4th of July. So we
Okay.
had family
Okay.
over. My grandmother was there. She was absolutely ecstatic. My grandmother,
Okay. Well, hold on. Let me ask you this: the
yes,
grandmother. This is your mother's
this is my
mother.
mother's mother.
So,
Yes,
grandmother is like, "Give me that baby," and your
she
mother is
is.
like total opposite.
No,
Oh,
she give
she
me
falls
that
in love.
baby.
Fine.
She's
She
at, oh
falls in
my gosh,
love.
he is the best thing since Swiss
Okay. Okay.
cheese.
Okay. I'm glad she
Like,
snapped out of that. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
she literally wasn't going to be there to the last moment. She was there for me to push. Like, yeah.
Okay.
I
Okay.
my aunt, her sister, was the person who was deemed to be in the room, and that was there. She had no intention of being in there, and I guess for whatever reason at the last
Because they
moment.
told her, "Girl, get your life together and get up there with them."
Yeah,
They just,
exactly.
you
And when I
know, they
say,
told
like,
her.
yeah, and my partner, like I said, I cannot express, for someone who had no idea about anything. Like I said, we were very raw in this. He did not. We got no training, no nothing.
Mm-hmm.
He undoubtedly advocated for me in ways that I had no idea.
You didn't know.
He
Yeah.
kicked my best friend out of the room when that's what I needed. You know what I mean? He was able to be quiet when I needed. He, gave me the space. He just,
Mm-hmm.
he really just showed up and showed out in that space. And I do believe that he probably did say something out there that
Oh, I'm
got her to
sure. I'm
come in the room.
sure. Yeah.
So she, at least she was there for that. And yeah, absolutely smitten from the time he
Of
was born.
course.
And that was it. And it was all about him. Um, so to be able to
So,
see a different side of her was great. And I was thinking, okay, well, maybe this will mend the relationship. Maybe, things
mm-hmm.
will, become different. But eventually it started to draw a wedge again. And that's because I was no longer allowed to make any decisions for my child. And we would get into little arguments where it really wasn't a big deal. But, we're at the doctor's office. This is my first doctor's appointment. I want to be asking questions. And yes, I
She's taking
appreciate the
over.
fact
That
that you
takeover
have,
spirit.
yeah,
That
I
takeover
appreciate,
spirit.
I know what you know, and you want to ask certain questions, but like, can I ask it? And
No.
she was the one to like just take it to the nth degree. Well, fine. Now I'm never coming to any other doctor's appointments. I didn't say that. All I said was, can I
So
ask the doctor
manipulative.
this? versus
Manipulative. Okay,
yes.
so I'm gonna now we're going forward. Baby is talking.
So baby is
We
talking, and we have moved
okay.
because my parents have now sold the house. Divorce is finalized, and now I'm like, okay, dude, now we're on our own.
Yeah.
And my oldest son has always been my roll dog.
They
Even when,
always
and I
are.
worked nights, so that's how I compensated with things. So I was home all day with him, and I worked nights, so that there was nothing. He had to be asleep by the time I went to work, and I had to be home by the time he woke up. So that was the
Mhm.
arrangement for me to go back to work. We move, and I'm like, I'm dreading having to put him in school, all of these other things. He's looking like his dad and his uncles.
Okay, so now we're looking like
And so
somebody.
I'm
Oh,
like, okay, he's looking like someone.
okay.
So fine, I'll give it to dad. He wins. That's what we'll go. He has my complexion, but he looks like his dad. Um, we come down here, and we're like, we're gonna make this. It's you and me, kid. And that's what we did. And when I tell you, life just took off for both of us, and we tried to, we figured it out. Um, and then in in walks my husband, who I had known from college. We were like two peas in a pod. We are
Mhm.
9 days apart. And he was in a relationship that had just ended as well. And he had a son who was 8 months old. So the two of us were like, well, sure, we can help each other. And so it was like a, friendship, hey, do what we need to do kind of thing. And then it ended up becoming more. I want to say around that time, my son was about 5, and his
Okay.
features started to change. And he's a whole me.
Okay. So is this what
And
prompts you to
and now I'm looking in my face. I'm looking in his face, and I'm like, oh wow. And one day he goes, Mom, I know I look like you, but who do you look like?
Ooh. And there it is.
And I was like, And because that's my road dog, I don't lie to him. I tell
Yeah.
him things that I probably shouldn't. Like,
At
that's
five.
just exactly. He's just that. You know what I mean? I
So
was like, you know
what did you tell him?
that's a good question. I was like, I don't know. And that was the first time that I ever told him that I was adopted.
Hmm.
Um,
And at 5, did he say, I know?
he didn't, but he was like, oh. And then he was like, that's cool. And then that was it. He's never other people never occurred to him. He knows my dad, that's Papa. He knows my mom,
Sure.
he's her a given name. Like
Sure.
he just knows that, and that's all he's known. And as far as I was concerned, that's all that mattered.
Right.
Even if I found someone else. Like
Mm-hmm.
I never looked at a search as a replacement. I never looked at a search as even adding family, because I didn't actually want to add family.
So
I
how do you come on?
I
I'm
didn't.
pulling it out of you. I'm
I didn't
pulling.
exactly. I wanted no family. So I went back again,
Okay.
and I'm like, all right, how do I get to figure this out? I went on adoption sites. I tried every free way
Yeah.
I possibly could
Did you
without
ever
paying
so
someone.
now I'm what are we? Or late 90s, early 2000? What
No,
where are
no.
we?
I was no. So this is two Joe was born 2010, so this is like 2015.
Okay, so are
Yeah, I was born in
you
85, and
yeah, I
I
was
went
trying to do the math.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. I was like born in 85, so I graduated from high school in '03.
Okay.
And then went off to college, and I was like, that's when I, started testing waters. I can tell you that I was not prepared for life at all as
So
cultured.
I asked the question because I wanted to know, did it ever, because I know it never occurred.
Mhm.
Well, I take that back. It did, but I didn't do it immediately. Did it ever occur to you to take a DNA test?
No, no. The first time it was ever brought to me was when I found out that my parents got a divorce. So I had transferred after my freshman year to the
Mm-hmm.
University of Delaware for my sophomore year. And right after my parents dropped me off is actually when my parents split. But I did not know until right before I came home for Thanksgiving. When I went back to school, everything spiraled. And I had a teacher who was just like, something's off. And so they were like, I need you to go to the mental health office.
Mm.
You get a pass for whatever the heck is going on with your classes right now. We will not even allow you to go back to class until you're cleared by a therapist. Um, I did not realize how I took the divorce, and I just felt like my entire world was crumbling. Everything that I knew as far as family, everything
Yeah.
that I knew as far as home
Was no
was
more.
just done.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like, so now where do I go?
Okay. So you go back to the adoption agency?
So yeah, I went back to the adoption agency and I actually started mentoring.
Not that
Yeah.
it's a bad thing, but why? What are you doing?
Subconsciously probably trying to see if there was some more inside information that I could get.
Uh-huh.
But
Let me go hang out at the adoption agency.
yeah, but I needed to be around more people like me
Makes sense.
because
Makes
I
sense.
hadn't. I have an amazing friend from high school. Um who is adopted, and she has been with me through this entire journey, even through hers. Like, it's something to have someone to go through who knows exactly what you're dealing
Exactly.
with,
Yeah.
can be happy for you at the
Yeah.
same parts, even if it's not happening for them at the same time, like all
Mm-hmm.
types of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So she was really like the first real person. I think I knew a couple of other people, but it was like, she's adopted, okay, like I said, filed next, nothing real. So I wanted to hear other stories. I wanted to know, was the life and the questions I was asking, was I crazy? Was I alone?
Mm.
Am I making this up? Like I said, I grew up in a very church centered place. So, now you want to use the Bible sometimes to
Mm-hmm.
ameliorate the situation. Oh, we're all adopted in the body of Christ. Yeah, we are, but you still know who your mommy and your daddy is. And you can look at one of them and at least say something about who you
Yeah.
look like.
Yeah.
I can't do
I
the
can't do that
same.
at all. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And so it was the therapist who started bringing up adoption. And I was like, what is this? What does my parents splitting have to do with that?
Mm.
And um, for me, I guess at the time I really wasn't trying to hear it. That wasn't something I
No,
was
because
really
you
trying
have
to
packed that
process.
down. Yeah.
Yeah,
That
it
was
wasn't. And so I was just like, this lady's over here telling me my feelings are wrong. She's like bringing up stuff that don't have nothing to do with nothing. She's trying to put me on drugs and they're making me feel crazy.
mm,
I did whatever I needed to do to get back
to
into
get back to
class,
class.
and yeah, exactly. And again, shove it down. So it wasn't until I started hanging out with now these adoptees that it was like, hey, why don't you do a DNA test? And I was like, all right. But I again stuffed it down. One Christmas, my dad, so now I am 33. So fast forward, so I'm about 33. Um, so my son's about 8. Yeah. And my dad calls me up and he's like, listen, I'm done with trying to figure out what you want for Christmas. I'm just going to put some money in your account, buy whatever Joe wants, my oldest. And he
Mm.
was just like, and then, do whatever you want. And I was like, okay, fine. So I get off the phone and I'm like, 23andMe is having a sale. Why don't I gift myself I'm just what I've been waiting for. So instead of some pots, which I was really looking for because I'm a chef, I was like, I really had my eye on this walk. It was like between a walk and a mixer. I was like, fine, I'm going to give to myself this DNA test. And I got like super excited. I called him and I told him about it. I didn't tell my mom about it, but I told him about it. And he goes, okay, let me know what you
What
find.
you find, yeah.
My dad has been like, even when I started looking and got that non-identifying information, he was like, Morgan, if you ever find anything cool, bring them over. Let's have a party. The more the merrier. That's always the way
Mm-hmm.
that he has looked at it. My mother, on the other hand, has not seen it that way.
Nope.
She did share, and like, I don't know. Well, my therapist would say something different, but I can empathize in ways because she dealt with the fear of, at one point in time, someone knocking on the door and coming to take me.
Yeah.
And that's a scary place to be, where this is what you've
Sure.
always wanted.
Sure.
And now what happens if this young girl does come and knock on my door and says she wants her baby back? How can I deny that? But that's also my baby too. And that's the the process that you're in. And for me, my parents chose me. They called my parents for another baby. And my mom was
Mm.
like, "No, what else you got?" So she's like, when we say that we picked you, like, we really picked you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I have that same experience. Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? And that's where they tried to, always just instill that self-esteem. Like, don't feel like you weren't wanted. You weren't wanted, you were chosen. These people got stuck with their kids. You got, they they
These
they
people got
tried
stuck.
very hard to make me
Bless their
feel.
hearts. They didn't know what to say.
Exactly, because kids were coming through the woodwork with all types of stuff, like you
Yeah.
weren't wanted, and you don't look like anybody, and
Yeah.
because my mom had moles on her face, it was something else, or because I was one of the only black kids in our town, and my dad had money, sometimes more than their parents did. It was, oh, your dad's working at Wall Street. They were always trying to attack something
Something.
that about me. So, they attempted as much as possible to shield me, build me up with as much self-esteem as possible. But at no point in time did they realize that the very thing of me being able to be me, for me to
Mm.
show me, for me to
Mm-hmm.
make my decisions, for me to express whatever emotions, however that was, and give me space to be able to do that, that would have been able to give
That would have
me
been, yeah, but they
the
don't.
self-esteem. But
Mm-mm.
no one tells them that.
No one tell. Nobody tells them
No
that.
one does that prior to saying, yes, you can adopt a
Right.
child.
They say, here's your baby.
Exactly. Oh, you want one? Sure.
Here you go.
Exactly.
This is what they say. Okay,
And
23
have
and
at
me.
it.
Yeah,
So
and have at it.
23
You are not wrong. 23 and me. Come on, let's go. You get these
23
DNA
and
results
me.
back and you sit
White
on it. Let me
lady.
guess. Let me guess.
No, I
Oh,
did
you
not.
didn't sit on it this
This is the
time.
first time I did not sit on it. I sat there on bated breath and hook like every day. But yeah, it was crazy. First person pops up, white lady. What? The most related person is a white lady.
Journey on, journey on. You need a pie, what they good? Oh yeah, what's the one?